And I said, honey, I may look like a clown, but you're the one that has to put a balloon animal down your pants. And oh, hi there. Sorry about that. Didn't see you. Welcome back to another Cold Blood and Cocktails. As you beautiful people know, any tiff you may have, please cast it away because this is a channel of positive energy, okay? Thank you. Oh, my little jumping jokers, how you doing today? I hope wherever you're at in the world, you're having a great day so far. I myself am doing wonderful. It's a very gloomy day outside, so it's perfect for this, and thank you so much for being here. Also, this hat is holding on by a hope and a prayer, so if she flies off, don't judge. But I am kind of digging this hair. Anyways, cheers to you. Let's talk about today's cocktail. It's called, I think, a Surfer on Acid, and it's equal parts Jaeger, pineapple juice, and pineapple rum. Let's try it. Ooh, that's nice. Yes, queen. So today's story, it is all sorts of fuckery. I mean, which one isn't? But the main guy in it is actually labeled as a vampire. But a few stories ago, we were the Count, so I can't be a vampire twice so soon. But a huge part of this story is acid, and if you're familiar with the Joker story from Batman, you'll probably understand the reference. Also, I promise you I'm not tired. Those were put there intentionally, and I'm kind of regurging it. It's exhausting being the Joker. Anyways, back to the story. There are so many more details than what I could add in this case. So if it piques your interest at all, definitely read up on the guy. It is wild. And of course, before we jump into this story, let's talk about today's sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by Scentbird. I have worked with this brand countless times over the last decade because I love their service. Call me crazy, but I don't always want to smell the same, and this subscription allows me to try products from designers like Versace, Prada, Gucci, and countless fabulous indie brands for a fraction of the price. It's 17 bucks a month. You pick a fragrance you'd like to try, you get it, and boom, you smell like a meal for the price of a snack. And this really is the perfect subscription to help build a relationship with fragrances, which I know does sound kind of weird, but you know how smelling grandma's cookies just brings you back to your childhood? Well, it's kind of the same with the scents you choose to wear. They can totally transport you and give you all the feels. You want to smell warm and inviting like a good bear hug? Then pick up one of my all-time favorites, Oh So Very Boozy Patchouli, which I know sounds just like me, right? It's lemony and kind of smells like a rose bouquet with a splash of pepper, just absolutely divine. Or if you're feeling extra spicy and sassy, you could try another one of my favorites, their gingery sister, Oh So Very Purple Noon. It smells so good. Or maybe you're just in like a rugged kind of mood and you want to make people flock to you like paparazzi. Well, on those kind of days, I'd go for something a little bit more musky and leathery and tobacco-y. Like this, the one for men by Dolce & Gabbana, just yum. Oh, it smells like sex in the woods. And if you aren't quite sure what to grab, don't worry about it. Scentbird can help you pick exactly what you want. They know that how you choose to smell is kind of a form of expression and can actually set the tone for your day or evening. And they come in these fabulous magnetic tubes too, which you can switch out to match your outfit. You can take the vial out entirely, or you can keep it just like this to throw in your bag and make sure it's protected. And if you do pop it in your bag, don't worry about it squirting all over your checkbook because it is locked for your protection. But these vials are filled to the brim. You actually get quite a lot, like plenty to last you at least a month. And when the month is done, you can get the same fragrance, you can try a different one, or you can even buy the full-size bottle. Oh my god, they smell good. Click the links down below or use the code POPLEX to save 55% on your first order. I promise your nose will thank you. Thank you. A big thanks to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video, and a huge thanks to you for all of the love and support. And now, back to our program. Today's Cold Blood and Cocktails is extra scary because this was one of those killers who you never saw coming. Like, nobody suspected a damn thing. It's like diarrhea at the airport. It creeps up on you and then boom! But this guy was respected, he was very well dressed, charming, handsome, a fucking liar, but nobody knew that then. Now we've realized that it doesn't matter who you are, that head of the PTA, Janine, could have a body bag in the back of her Subaru. But back in the early 1900s, the thought of a normal-seeming person being a killer, that's just preposterous. So, who is this dude? Why, John Haig, aka the acid bath murderer. He was born all the way back in 1909 in England. Yes, this is another vintage case. And this guy, John, was kind of the black sheep of the family. He was brought up in a super religious house. I don't mean like a few crosses on the wall. I'm talking Bible verses are the only thing you communicate with, otherwise you'd be struck down by lightning. And for John, this extremism made his childhood really lonely. He couldn't play sports because that was a sin, and God forbid you ever left the religion. You were basically shunned for life. John's dad would tuck him in at night and be like, okay, don't forget, the world is a savage and evil place and you're going to hell if you think otherwise. Okay, good night, love you, bye. Like, how in the fuck is a child supposed to process that? And when John developed a blue mark on his head as a kid, he was scolded because clearly this was a sign that he'd somehow sinned. No, he should be more like his mom, who had no marks on her face and was pure as an angel. As if her ass didn't have a full stock of concealer in her nightstand. Cheers Cheers to that one. But John was told several times, if you sin, you'll get boils and welts all over your body, so don't fucking do it. Well, one day, John had been on the school playground and called another boy a mean name. Immediately, he felt shame because it's just a terrible sin to look somebody in the eye and call him a rat-faced little bitch. And he was waiting all evening for the boils to erupt or his flesh to fall off like a slow-roasted barbecue, but nothing happened. And so he was like, what the hell? Maybe it wasn't a big enough sin. So John would pull Susie's pigtails or steal a naughty magazine from the corner store and wait for the marks to appear. And son of a bitch, nothing happened. And come to think of it, nary a classmate showed any sign of being branded by the devil either. Even that skank lunch lady Sandy, who we all saw grope the PE teacher at the school dance, had no mark of the devil. Like, come the fuck on. And John sat back and was like, mother of shit, I've been duped. And so now at a very young age, he was kind of conflicted with what his parents had told him versus this newfound reality, a reality that he quite liked. Because with this new world, he was now able to lie, and shit, he was good at it. So good, in fact, that he became a pathological liar. Like, if he was so good at it, why didn't he just take up acting? Become a theater queen? He'd misbehave in class, he'd eventually call the lunch lady a slut bag in front of the whole school, and then come home and tell his parents a bald-faced lie to wriggle out of it. And on the rare occasions where he would get caught, oh, his mama would beat him good. She'd whack the back of his hands with the bristle end of a hairbrush, and I'm not saying that he liked it, but he definitely didn't not like it. Not the pain part, that was torture, but the end result with the blood trickling down his hands that he could lick up, oh, that was heaven. Can we get a suspicious shot for that? Oh, that's a dangerous drink. Daddy likes. Anyways, now that John was becoming a teenager, he'd lay in bed at night and have so many fantasies. I'm sure you're thinking like a Sports Illustrated cover kind of fantasy, but why the fuck would we be here if that were the case? No, madam, these were not your average visuals. Like, in his mind, he pictured Jesus with blood pouring out of his side, and he liked it. Oh, he wanted to taste that blood, or really any blood would be fine with him. So John, who is now 16, was royally fucked up from having two conflicting worlds collide, now add a thirst for a blood smoothie into the mix. The dude probably could have used some professional help, but heaven for fucking did we do that. Cause honestly, it was all downhill from there. I mean, not even a hill, it was a freaking cliff. For example, just a few years after he realized he was a wannabe vampire, he had a run-in with the law for fraudulent shit. He lost his job, kind of became a hermit, and found himself fascinated with this current famous murder case. He was obsessed, kind of like how I was with The Hills for a year, but his was in a really unhealthy way. But the case that he really liked is actually kind of important here. There was this lady, a male lawyer, and another guy who had a scheme going where the lawyer would find a dying guy, insure him, then get his lady friend to marry the dying dude on his deathbed. The third guy, who is in great health, would then go with the woman to the insurance agency and say his name was whatever the dying guy's name was. And then because this fake guy clearly wasn't a risk, they'd be guaranteed coverage, and then boom, the real dying guy would be dead. Instant money, like make it rain. Honestly, it's kind of ingenious, but terrible. Well, the fake husband and the lady end up blackmailing the lawyer, who in turn killed the two and then dissolved their bodies in sulfuric acid. And the lawyer honestly probably would have gotten away with it had he not gone on to do the same fucking thing 2 more times and then been caught. Obviously, the guy was convicted and sentenced to death, but all John kept thinking while reading this shit was, you dumbass, I'm 100 times smarter than you. I bet you I would have gotten away with it. Okay, John, you tell yourself that, whatever makes your hot dog juicy. Well, a few years go by and John ends up getting engaged to a girl he barely even knew, which, as we know, always works out for the best. She was cute, young, and just smitten with how charming and well-mannered John was. But all throughout the engagement, his new gal Betty was kind of having second thoughts. She wasn't really sure if he actually was a nice person and where the fuck would their money be coming from. And the fact that they had to keep their entire relationship a secret from his family was really freaking weird. Like, she's a babe and a half. Shouldn't he be proud of all this goodness? John's parents nearly died when they heard he'd slipped a ring on this trick's finger, but they did eventually come around and they did go through with the wedding. And the couple actually ends up living with John's parents, but this marriage was straight out of Hollywood because it only lasted 4 months. Shocker, neither of them knew the other and it ended up in a fiery flame from hell. Wow! Well, the fact that John was arrested, yet again, probably didn't help either. He went to prison for forging vehicle documents, and while he was behind bars, Betty ended up divorcing his ass, giving birth to their baby, which she gave up for adoption, and that was the end of them. And they saw each other only once more, and that was when John told Betty that their entire marriage was a scam because he was actually married to another girl at that time. And this was a total lie though, like nobody even knows why the hell he said it other than to lie, which makes sense because at this point the dude was a professional bullshitter and he'd been practicing since childhood. Well, the moment he got out of prison, he thought, you know what? I'm gonna get my ass on the straight and narrow. See, now if I said that, you'd think I'm talking about my evening plans, but no, John actually wanted to live an honest life now. And he did. He opened up a dry cleaning business, which, who knows, could have turned into money laundering in the future. But we'll never know because John's business partner was killed in a motorcycle accident plant, and the cleaners were taken to the cleaners. He threw his hands up, said, "Fuck life, I need a new one," and he moved to London to start over, which he actually ended up finding a pretty good gig as a driver for the McSwan family. They owned a big-ass arcade machine company, they had several properties, and were rich as hell, so needless to say, he was finally doing alright. Feeling rich as hell. But in true John style, he almost immediately got into some shady shit and went to prison for 4 years. Well, while in prison, his mind would not stop thinking about those acid murders. Oh, how satisfying it would be to watch a body melt into nothingness like cotton candy in a glass of water. And when John finally got out of the clink, oh, he was thrilled because he could finally put his fantasies to the test. And what do you know? He found it only took about 30 minutes to completely dissolve a dead rat in acid. Interesting and hella suspicious. After he'd do those little experiments, in the evening, he'd go to local pubs, order a few drinks, and sit in the corner skinning the room and think, I wonder how long it would take to dissolve a body. And at this time, John did kind of need money, like that buttered brioche ain't gonna buy itself after all. Plus, John was quite the gambler and not very good at it, so his debts were real and large. So his idea of melting someone down in a vat of acid began to turn into a fantasy of melting a rich person. And then those fantasies began turning into a plan. Well, one night, amidst his murderous planning, John's old friend and boss, William McSwan, just happened to wander into the same bar John was sitting at and was like, "Hey, you old so-and-so, how you been? Did you catch the Packers game?" They really had been great pals when John worked for him. They were the same age, they had similar interests, and eventually William even introduced John to his parents. That's how you know it's real. And they decided to be the cutest gay couple ever at the end. Kidding, yeah, fucking right. But John did think William's parents were absolutely lovely, and especially thought it was impressive that they just purchased even more rental properties. Like, he wanted to be William. One could say John even had Willie envy, especially when he would see good old William hop around town and collect all of the rents due on his parents' properties. Like, this dude and his parents had money. I'm talking reserved room at Chanel to drop 10 grand on a Tuesday kinda rich. Well, they'd become such close buds that when William confided in John about being called into military service, he fully agreed that William had to go into hiding. He even told William's parents what had happened, and they totally understood. And John really wasn't complaining either. Like, he had a pretty fucking sweet for a while, seeing as he'd basically taken over William's life. He was now living in William's house and collecting the rent checks on all the McSwan properties. This was exactly what he'd wanted, to be William. He'd have lunch with William's parents weekly, their treat of course, but then they'd start to ask John and say, "Have you heard from William lately?" And John would be putting caviar in his toasted crumpet and say, "No," which was honestly the truth. And William's parents became very curious and a bit worried when, after a full year and the war was coming to a close, he still didn't return. Turns out that whole military hiding story was just a bullshit cover-up, because John's bestie boo, Willie, well, he was dead. Shocker, right? And probably suspicious. In fact, by the time John had told William's parents he'd gone into hiding over a year ago, William didn't even have a body anymore. John made sure of that. John had been on the prowl looking for a rich person to kill, and so when William walked into that bar that John was in that night, he'd unknowingly signed his own death sentence. John had always been jealous of William, and after hanging out multiple times, William had been comfortable enough to be lured into John's basement. I know, I'm just as surprised as you are that a windowless white van wasn't involved, but here we are. But no, John was like, "Dude, come look at my giant fanny pack collection, you'd love them," and then bang! John hit him over the head with a lead pipe, knocked him out, and put him into a barrel of concentrated sulfuric acid. While he was still alive too, I mean, not for much longer, but can we get a fucked up shot for that? He checks on William a half hour later, but it seems like humans might dissolve a bit slower than his rats did. But 2 days later, when he opened that barrel, all that was left was pretty much sludge. Can we get another icky shot? Oh, I might need another one of these. Oh, how about that? Just like magic. Oh, wow. So, in the middle of the night, John heaved that barrel up his basement stairs like a fucking demonic Santa Claus, dragged it out to the curb, opened the manhole cover, and dumped it. Like, how fucking sad. An entire life just turned into liquid and poured down the drain. Like, all murder is sad, but there's just nothing left of you. This, my friends, is why you should always use a water filter. This is straight out of the tap. No, but seriously. Anyways, a year and a few months go by. William's parents are like, "Where the fuck is he? The war's almost over." So John's like, "It's time to start planning the second bit to my plot." He calls William's parents, is like, "Oh my god, come the hell over. William is back from hiding in Scotland, party at his house." So the parents come over, apple pie in hand, and just like their son, get lured into the basement and hit over the head with a fucking lead pipe. John melted their bodies, dumped their goo into the manhole, and went on his merry way. He ends up cashing everyone's pension checks, selling all the McSwan properties, all for around £8,000, which today would only be like £130,000. Like, what the fuck, right? 3 lives lost for 100 grand? What the hell? He thinks he's living high on the hog now, though, so he moves into a fancy hotel and gambles almost everything away. Now he's like, well, shit, we're back to square one. So he starts his hunt for a new couple, and along the way, he stopped into this beautiful house that was for sale. This house belonged to Archibald and Rose Henderson, who John instantly took a liking to. They didn't know that John was literally the worst friend ever. He sounds like he would show up to a dinner party without a gift because he is a present enough. But he was like, you know, I adore the hand-carved newts that are set into the banister, and who the hell doesn't love a good lanai? I would give anything to be you for a day and have this. And the couple says, if you like this house, you'd love our apartment. In fact, we're having a little housewarming party later. Why don't you come and play the piano at it, and we'll give you a full tour. Oh, honey, creeper alert, don't invite him over. Well, that invite was their ticket to Acid City, because the moment John saw those 14-foot ceilings inside the apartment, he was like, they're the ones. Sure, they knew how to throw a good party, and the finger food was to die for, but the only thing John had his eye on that whole night was the revolver he'd seen in Archie's closet. And the couple really didn't seem any the wiser when the gun went home in John's back pocket. John was like, oh hey Archie, new pal, you want to come over and see this cool invention? It was now 1948, and for the last several months, John had been hopping from hotel to hotel, so his drums of acid couldn't very well travel with him. So to store them, he'd rented this tiny little workshop, the very workshop that he'd invited Archibald to. And Archibald was like throwing a cigar and it's a date. So John picks Archibald up, brings him over to the workshop, shoots him in the head with his own stolen gun, and then dumps him in the acid. Like, to kill him is enough, but to do it with his own fucking gun? Rude. John then calls Rose and is frantically telling her that Archie is puking left and right, probably from the can of tuna they'd been snacking on. Could she come pick him up? She rushes over, runs into the workshop, and has the same fate as her husband. A few days later, John dumped the couple down the workshop's drain, forged their signatures, and sold everything they had for another 8,000 pounds. He just fucking went ham and got rid of everything except for their car and their dog, which was now his. Oh god, my nose is so itchy. Fuck. But just like before, he was fucking terrible with his money. If he had $1, he'd spend $1.50. And again, his money well went dry, and he was on the hunt for another wealthy victim. Which turned out to be a rather short-lived hunt, because what luck! The older dude down the hall of the hotel John was staying at had just passed away, and his rich widower suddenly found herself telling John all about this acrylic nail company she wanted to start. He says, you know what, Olive? That's her name. He says, I'm an engineer. I could help you with that idea. Come down to my workshop today and we can talk. First of fucking all, he was a damn liar. He was not an engineer. He just worked for one. Second of all, not the workshop, Olive. Run, mama! By now, he'd moved location, so he moved workshop, so this would be his first kill in this new one. Like, how exciting! What a fucking weirdo. He lured her in, shot her in the head with Archie's revolver, stripped her of anything expensive, including her Persian lamb coat, then dumped her in the barrel of acid. 2 days later, Olive was reported missing, and what do you know? The cops seem to notice that there's a guy in the area that has quite the felonious track record. God, I love that word, felonious. The cops kind of helped themselves into John's workshop to do a little snippety snoop, and literally the first briefcase they found had the dry cleaning tag for Olive's lamb jacket. Nobody ever said this John guy was smart, other than himself, of course. But this briefcase also had documents from Rose and Archibald's apartment and the McSwan home, so like, mic drop on that one, bitch. But this workshop, unlike his last one, didn't have a drain to pour the goo down. So John's ass dumped Olive's acid in the rubble pile out back. The cops end up finding 28 pounds of human fat, a chunk of a foot, human gallstones, and a piece of denture, which was confirmed by Olive's dentist. John is immediately arrested, and at his trial, he decides to label himself as crazy to try to get into a mental facility and out of the death penalty. He said his dreams heavily involved blood, most of which directed him to drink it. So to satiate his thirst, he'd kill his victims, drink a glass of their blood like strawberry Nesquik, and then dissolve their bodies. And nobody really knows if this whole vampire shtick was just a lie to enhance his crazy image, but boy did the media slurp it up. This was all anybody could talk about, and he even underwent several psychiatric tests and was found to be sane, just a really shitty ass person. For some reason, John was mistakenly under the assumption that if there was no body, there was no proof. But his balls flew up to his belly when after literally 10 minutes, the entire jury found him guilty. Turns out he was not smarter than that lawyer whose story inspired this whole life of murder. That acid bath killer had been caught, and so had John. So because it did turn out that John was just a selfish asshole, on the 10th of August in 1949, he was hanged, but his story went on to be in songs and TV shows, video games, stage plays, and he was even turned into a wax figure at Madame Tussauds. So like, yay for your legacy living on? No, we're not cheersing that. He was a terrible person. I know we do this pretty much every week, but it will never not be shocking how terrible people are. Like, how can you just destroy people and their family and their lives for money? What the fuck? Anywho, back to being a channel of positive energy. Thank you so much for being here. I just love having you. And you know what? If you want a little bit more me in your life, head over to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/poplux. You get videos a day early. You get Patreon-only content, and best part, it is cheap, fun, and fancy, just like me. Comment down below. Let me know what you thought of this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Snapchat, Instagram, Instagram and Twitter at officialnady, and you can follow me online at thepoplux.com. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all, and I will see you again soon. Bye!